From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Donald Trump and Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, visit East Palestine, Ohio, the rural town that is the site of the terrible train derailment more than 2 weeks ago. We'll tell you about their dueling messages and what, if anything, it means. Plus, Vivek Ramaswamy, the biotech entrepreneur, gets into the Republican race for president. Does he have a chance? And South Carolina Senator Tim Scott gives a speech in Iowa suggesting that he, too, may soon join the ranks of presidential candidates for the Republican nomination for president. Welcome. I'm Paul Gigot, and I'm joined today by my peerless peers, Kim Strassel and Alicia Finley. Welcome to you both. Let's talk about the unfortunate town of East Palestine first. Mayor Pete, as we used to call him, Pete Buttigieg, been Treasury Secretary now for a couple years, coming under criticism for not having visited the town until now, despite the trauma of that train derailment. He finally showed up this week, and let's listen to what he had to say.
Well, to be clear, our department was on the ground within hours, helping with the response and the investigation. Again, I respect the separate role of NTSB, but we have been on the ground literally from day one to make sure that we're doing our part to support. I do think that it's important to speak out about that, and I could have spoken out sooner, and I'm making sure that we are focused on the actions that are going to make a difference.
Alicia, first of all, word just came across the wire here as we were getting prepared for this that the NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, thinks that the cause of the derailment may have been an overheated wheel bearing. We don't know many more details other than that. So what do you make of the message that Pete Buttigieg brought to the townspeople of East Palestine?
Well, I feel a little sympathetic to him on one hand because he said last week that, well, there are about 1,000 derailments every year. This one has drawn more attention because of the damage, but these things happen, which was, in my view, that's right. We didn't know at the time exactly what the cause is, and I think the National Transportation Safety Board is still investigating. They know that it was an overheated wheel bearing, I think around 253 degrees Fahrenheit above ambient temperature, and Norfolk Southern had detection systems in place, but they didn't seem to detect these record temperatures, and so I think there's going to be more investigation of that. But the responsibility is really up to the EPA in terms of responding to the chemical hazards and the National Transportation Safety Board, which has been investigating what's on the ground. What we've really had in recent days is now Pete Buttigieg is now trying to parry the criticism he's received by a lot of Republicans for not, coming out and showing more sympathy and compassion, which you should do whenever there's a tragedy like this, by kind of putting out some proposals and demands upon the railroads that really have nothing to do with the disaster and aren't going to prevent future disasters. And he's trying to deflect blame or deflect attention from the administration. I don't think you can argue really that the administration is at fault in any way for this disaster, but I think they're now trying to politicize it in a way that really doesn't serve the people of East Palestine.
And Kim, some of those suggestions from Secretary Buttigieg concern time-honored, if you will, requests by big labor to things they've wanted for a long time, which he's now trying to shoehorn into a response to the derailment.
Yeah, this is naked opportunism, okay? He sent a letter to the CEO of Norfolk Southern, Alan Shaw, and he complained that the railways had invested millions of dollars in courts and litigation and in lobbying members of Congress to oppose common sense safety regulations, etc. This is really glossing over the history here. You go back to 2013, there was a very awful train derailment in Quebec. This set off a conversation about railway safety. In 2015, the Obama administration put in new rules governing what they call electronically controlled pneumatic brakes, insisting that they go into certain high-hazard trains. The problem here is that there's no real evidence that those brakes are that much better than what is around, although they're extremely expensive. I would also note in this particular case, now that we're hearing that there was an overheated wheel bearing, they would have had no bearing whatsoever on this train situation itself. These rules wouldn't have even applied to this particular train, since they only apply to certain high-hazard flammable trains, which this one was not. But because they were expensive, it is true that the industry litigated, and the Trump administration rescinded those rules. And now we're we're having a conversation again in Congress about whether or not to bring them back. But he offered up a number of other just kind of red herrings. There needs to be more actual people involved in inspecting tracks instead of the technology that's currently being used in many places. This is, as you note, a time-honored labor complaint. They would still love to be doing everything in triplicate, writing it out by hand. They don't like automation. More complaints from Buttigieg. We need more crew members on the train. There's not much evidence to suggest that would have mattered here. My favorite is paid sick leave. I'm not quite sure how having paid sick leave for the unions would do anything for the overheated wheel bearing, but they're going to throw in everything they can right now. They're going to try to make it sound as though this is all down to corporate greed and try to get some pieces of their own regulatory agenda in play on the basis of this crisis.
All right. Probably the thing to follow here is the investigation by the NTSB and see how that turns out and whether or not there's anything from a regulatory point of view that would make a difference, or if this is just a failure of a system that's already in place. And sometimes that, of course, does happen. All right. The town also had another visitor, Donald Trump, former president, also showed up bringing what he called Trump water to the town where people are concerned about the quality and safety of the local tap water in the wake of the derailment. Let's listen to Mr. Trump.
We're bringing thousands of bottles of water, Trump water, actually, most of it. Some of it we had to go to a much lesser quality water. You want to get those Trump bottles, I think, more than anybody else. But we're bringing a lot of water, thousands of bottles, and we have it in trucks, and we brought some on my plane today. But to that end, I'm pleased to announce that we've helped coordinate the delivery of the water and bottled water as well as the tractor trailers full of it. We have big tractor trailers full of water. I think you're going to have plenty of water for a long time, maybe.
Trump water to the rescue. Didn't bring Trump steaks, but did bring Trump water. Kim, it's smart politics by Trump, I think. Of course, he's now declared for president again. This part of Ohio is a rural county. It's very much Trump country, Trump voter country. And Trump is trying to demonstrate some solidarity here with the people there who have expressed a lot of frustration that maybe because they're simply a rural county in a Trump part of the state that they've been ignored by President Biden. The criticism has been that if this were a different part of the country, President Biden would have been on a plane there to acknowledge the trouble a lot earlier. I don't know that that's fair. A president can't attend every disaster area, but he did create this timing opening for Trump, and Trump is filling it. The other thing I would say, though, is that on the tap water front, the governor, Republican governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, and the EPA head, Michael Regan, the Environmental Protection Agency, they both drank from a tap this week to try to show that it's safe. And Trump, meanwhile, was saying, well, that water might not be safe. I'm not so sure that's a good message.
Yeah, look, he's trying to capitalize on this. In addition to bringing the water and expressing solidarity, he's definitely much making that contrast. While he was there, he said, they're doing nothing for you. They were intending to do nothing for you. So he very much wants this to be a criticism of Biden leadership and Pete Buttigieg leadership. I agree with you. The water thing is a little concerning only in that Mike DeWine is actually a Republican governor. The EPA has been doing extensive testing out there. They've been on a real mission recently to kind of calm fears over this. And as you said, went to great lengths to publicly drink tap water to get that message across. This definitely undercuts that a little bit. It's notable to me that is this what Trump is going to do as a sort of campaign strategy? Since he announced, and it's been some time now, he hasn't really given that many events, yet he played up this one really big. And I think it sort of shows the degree to which he's taking an even more populist bent this time around on this second campaign, which is just notable from a bigger perspective about how he intends to make his bid for presidency this time.
Alicia, did President Biden make a mistake? And Mayor Pete, who also wants to be president, I think, and ran once, will run again, I suspect, if President Biden does not run. But did the president make a mistake, create an opening for Trump here?
I do. And I'm actually surprised that they allowed this because Biden and much of the left are trying to appear to be more pro-worker, and a lot of their outreach have really been trying to win back some of these areas in rural counties, Ohio, Pennsylvania, that Trump picked off. and has, built a lot of support out there. And it's kind of surprising that they neglected this and misread the politics. And especially if you recall 6-7 years ago when the Flint water crisis in Flint, Michigan, when there was lead poisoning among children and people out there, the politicians, including Biden at that time, were immediately on the ground. They tried to make it a political issue about, racial discrimination. And so, the contradiction or the disparate treatment here will probably be picked up by some Republicans on the right, just showing that as Trump has tried to make this theme of his campaign and back in 2016, 2020, and now again about the forgotten man and how Democrats are abandoning or neglecting these rural, working class white towns.